Let's tap. Hey all sorcerers, Rude here, and welcome back to the archives for another Learn to Play video. Today we're going to be talking all about activating abilities, including tapping, move, attack, defend, and intercept. You won't want to miss this video with these really important to understand sorcery contested realm concepts. Well, thanks again for joining. Let's get into it. For today's rule review, we'll be going through pages 20 through 26 of the Sorcery Contested Realm rulebook, talking more about basic abilities and activating abilities. Let's get into it. Now that our board is set up, we'll talk about the basic abilities first, 2 that can be done on your turn, and 2 that can be done on your opponent's turn. There are 4 basic abilities in total. The most important, and one that you'll probably use most often, is Move and Attack. Move and Attack is the basic ability combined that allows you to move and then choose to attack at the end of that movement. Movement is based on the type of unit and if there's any special keywords that are located there. As we had mentioned in a previous rules video, the unit of measurement in terms of movement is the step, which is essentially one location away from the unit itself. It's important to note that each unit's default movement is 1 step, and there are some keywords such as movement plus that will allow units to move more than 1 step. Additionally, moving from the surface to the subsurface via burrow or submerge uses 1 step, and if you would like to surface that unit moving up from the subterranean level, surfacing will also cause 1 step to be used. Traversing the void uses the same rules as traversing sites, and it takes 1 step to move into and out of the void and to traverse it as normal. When we're thinking about sorcery cards and specifically differentiating between your avatar and minions, the term unit is used to describe all, whereas if you were just to describe using a minion, you would just use the term minion. In terms of the 2 abilities that can be done on your turn, Move and Attack, as I'd mentioned, is the most common, and the second is picking up or dropping artifacts. On your opponent's turn, you can use Defend and Intercept. Let's start with a couple of scenarios to play out and see how these rules really start to work in practice. Prior to getting into the details, let's quickly surveil the battlefield. On our side, the avatar is Sorcerer. We have a Stealth Midnight Rogue that has ranged. We have a Gyre Hippogriffs that's holding a Poisonous Dagger, the Gnomes, which are on the surface, and then the Spectral Stalker, which is located in the void. The opponent has a Cloud Spirit that's airborne with movement plus 2, Wave Shaper is the avatar, and a non-submerged Coral Reef Kelpie that is on the surface. Remember, the power both relates to the amount of damage that a minion can do, as well as the amount of life that it has for that turn. Our Sorcerers and Wave Shaper are our avatars. They both start with 20 health, and they have a power of 1. The health regenerates at the end of the turn for the minions. Damage is persistent to our avatars. Special keywords to take into note. Stealth means that the Midnight Rogue can't be the target of specific abilities and spells, and it also can't be hit by projectiles. Void Walk allows the Spectral Stalker to move throughout the void. Ranged allows the Midnight Rogue to shoot a projectile 1 step in a cardinal direction that is equal to its power. It also allows it to attack and intercept against airborne minions. We also see that the Gnomes have burrowing, which allows them to burrow underneath the surface, and the Poisonous Dagger gives the Hippogriffs lethal, which means that anything that it blocks, regardless of the power, will die. Airborne means that minions can move diagonally, which is very important to remember for a scenario like this. Airborne gives nearby movement and is something to really consider when you're placing them down. In addition to Airborne, the Cloud Spirit has movement plus 2, which means that in addition to its 1 basic movement, it can actually move 2 additional steps. And what that would look like is that the Cloud Spirit would be able to move here, or move down here, possibly even over to here if it didn't get intercepted by the Midnight Rogue. Finally, the Coral Reef Kelpie has Submerge, and it is on the surface. Move and Attack is one of the most used basic abilities in Sorcery. It allows you to move within that unit's range of movement to either attack the surface of a site, another minion directly, or the opponent's avatar itself. In this case, the Spectral Stalker moves to attack the surface of the Spring River. It's important to note that if you have a minion that is burrowed or submerged, it cannot attack and lead to a loss of life from the subsurface, unless it moves to the surface of that site and attacks the surface. Here, our Spectral Stalker attacks the Spring River, and it deals 2 damage to the Wave Shaper, which means that it goes from 20 life down to 18. As previously mentioned, one of the other basic abilities that you can use on your turn is dropping and picking up things. Here, we're going to want to drop this Poisonous Dagger so that our gnomes can pick it up. You can drop any number of artifacts that you carry onto the site that you are on. It is not a tap ability, but of note, you can't have attacked prior to that. On the flip side, the gnomes can pick up any number of artifacts that are located on this site, and it is not a tap ability. So we're going to drop this with the hippogriffs and then pick it up with the gnomes. The gnomes will get much better use from this because it has lethal and they're only 1 power, whereas the hippogriffs have 3 power and can really deal with anything that's out on the board right now already. At the end of that interaction, let's see what happens when we try to attack the surface of this site right here. Now, of note, we had mentioned before that you can defend or intercept on your opponent's turns. So the Wave Shaper has the ability right now to potentially defend against the hippogriffs. Hippogriffs are airborne, but as they come down to attack a surface of a site, you can defend with adjacent minions or with minions that are within their movement range. So here we have the Cloud Spirit, which has movement +2, which would allow it to get over here, or the Coral Reef Kelpies. The Kelpies could block the hippogriffs, but they would both die. Defense can be conducted by any number of minions or units that are within blocking distance. So in this case, when the hippogriffs attack here, it would be possible to block with both the Coral Reef Kelpie and the Wave Shaper, or all 3 because it is within their range of movement. It's important to remember that because when you're attacking a site, you need to really be aware of the placement of your opponent's minions. Additionally, say for instance the hippogriffs were attacking the Kelpie directly, you can choose if you were going to block with multiple minions or multiple units, whether or not you want that minion to stay within the combat itself. Let's put this back here and make our decision about what to do. Here we'll decide to block with both the Kelpies and the Wave Shaper. Note that to block, the minion or the unit has to be untapped. Here, the units are getting ready to fight. Combat in Sorcery relates to allocating damage based on power, which is also the amount of life that that unit or minion has. Here we've got 3 damage coming from the hippogriffs, 3 coming from the Kelpies on the defense side, and 1 from the Wave Shaper. When there's a combat with multiple combatants, the controller of each side may allocate their unit's damage among the enemies as they wish. What this means is that I can choose, as the attacker, to allocate all of my damage to the Kelpie, all of my damage to the Wave Shaper, and on the defense side, they can choose to allocate their damage how they would like to the hippogriffs, which all goes to that. For this scenario, let's allocate all of our damage to the Coral Reef Kelpie. What that means is they both would go to the respective cemeteries and exit the game. The site being unscathed because the defender stepped in, and the Wave Shaper taking no damage from the combat. If I had wanted to, I could have also allocated only partial damage to each of the other units, but it wouldn't have really had a net positive for me with the hippogriffs, considering that it only had 3 power. For the rest of the Sorcerer's turn, I'm going to move forward, and I will attack this site with the gnomes. Now I could defend with the Cloud Spirit, but because of that lethal, it would instantly kill it. So instead, I'll choose to allow the gnomes to attack the site, and that would lead to a 1 life reduction on the Wave Shaper's side. If I did choose to block with the Cloud Spirit, the power of the gnomes is 1, and the power of the Spirit is 2. The spirit would kill the gnomes. Both would die because of the lethal, but the dagger itself would actually drop to the surface of the site and be able to be picked up by another unit in the future. As the sorcerer's turn comes to an end, the sorcerer will choose to use the move and attack basic ability. The sorcerer will move to this humble village here, and it will end the turn in this location. It's important to discuss the terminology surrounding attacking and defending and the way damage is allocated before moving on. When the hippogriffs attacked this site, and it was blocked by the Wave Shaper and the Kelpie, they fought. The fight itself allows each unit to strike simultaneously. Some cards will allow you to strike units, which would be a one-sided dealing of damage based off of the power. When you see a card that says strike target unit or target unit strikes something adjacent, know that it's dealing damage based on its power. Conversely, if there's an ability that says on the unit's next strike, that would also count for combat damage that has been assigned, as when units fight, they're both striking simultaneously. Now that we've discussed the three other basic abilities, move and attack, drop and pick up, and defend, we'll discuss the final, which is Intercept. For the purposes of this demonstration, let's move the Midnight Rogue up here and leave it untapped. Similar to attack and defend, when you intercept, you need to be untapped. Intercept is a basic ability that can be used on your opponent's turn. The Cloud Spirit wants to attempt to move to attack the Sorcerer, but the Midnight Rogue is in the way. Intercept can be used when a unit attempts to move through a location or move onto a location that is occupied by another unit that can block it. So the Midnight Rogue has ranged. It also has stealth, which means the Cloud Spirit can't directly attack it. If the Cloud Spirit attempts to move through to get to the Sorcerer, the Midnight Rogue can declare that it is intercepting the Cloud Spirit because it has ranged, and that nullifies the Airborne. For the Midnight Rogue to intercept the Cloud Spirit, it would have to tap. That would also mean that stealth immediately goes away. If there were multiple units here that were all able to intercept the Cloud Spirit and they were untapped, they could do that as well. When a unit chooses to intercept, it immediately stops the movement, the attack that was going to happen gets nullified, and then both units fight, sharing blows at the same time while they strike each other simultaneously. In this case, the Midnight Rogue and the Cloud Spirit would both sustain 2 damage, which is the amount of power that they have, sending each to the respective cemetery. It's important to note that units cannot move to intercept. They have to intercept on a site that was attempting to be moved through or moved onto by another unit, and it wasn't the target of an attack on that particular site. Say, for instance, the Cloud Spirit attempted to attack the Gothic Tower. The Midnight Rogue could just defend that attack. But because it was attempting to move through, it was able to intercept. In a different scenario, if the Midnight Rogue was located at this location, and the Sorcerer was located here, the Cloud Spirit could move 1, 2, and then attack here for 3. The Midnight Rogue would not be able to intercept because you cannot move when you're intercepting. Finally, we'll talk about activated abilities. We'll clean up the board a little bit before we do so. Activated abilities are abilities that require the unit to tap. They're pretty self-explanatory and can be read down in the text box for most cards. Here, the activated ability for the Sorcerer says tap to draw a spell. So, on my turn I can tap and use that activated ability to draw this spell. Oh man, look at that. We get a blink. Let's move forward one. Let's remember back to our lesson on casting minions. Minions enter the battlefield with Summoning Sickness. That means they can't use activated abilities the turn that they come into play unless they have the charge keyword. Finally, one incredibly exciting new addition coming with Arthurian Legends is Minions with Split Power. Minions with Split Power will have both an attack value as well as a defensive value known as attack power and defensive power. It's pretty self-explanatory. When a minion with split power attacks, the attack power is the damage dealt, whereas the defensive power is the amount of life it has and how much damage it can absorb during a combat. I'm really excited to see how the split power plays out and how it interfaces with all the cards we've gotten used to in Alpha and Beta. Finally, if there's a card that alters the power of a minion that has split power, it will increase or alter both the attack and defensive values unless otherwise specified. So that means that when we're boosting the power, say for instance with a Tor's Hammer Trinket, both the attack power and the defensive power would be increased. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for a review of activating abilities, the basic abilities, move and attack, intercept, defend, and picking up and dropping artifacts. I hope this helped you to learn a little bit more about the game and really how your cards interact with the game board itself. If you've liked this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, we'd love if you could subscribe so you can also get access to all the great videos we're going to be putting out in the future, including some upcoming rules videos. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've liked, please share and comment down below on things that you think would be helpful to learn more about in the future. We appreciate you visiting the archives, and I'll see you in the contested realms.